Okay. Hi, Dr. Rob.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us at Sex and Relationship Healing. I am here every week at Monday night at 5 o'clock California time to answer questions about sex, love, and relationship addiction, intimacy disorders, cheating, infidelity, and all of those kinds of issues. I won't announce myself. I won't give my formal resume because you guys pretty much probably know who I am. But if you want more information about me or the work that we do, you can find it on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. If you find this a difficult time to join us and you want to see me at another time, at 6 p.m. California time, I'm also on In the Rooms, which is a 12-step outreach platform for people who want to reach recovery online. And I volunteer there on Friday nights, and I volunteer here on Monday nights. So I'm here twice a week online. The reason we do this is because I know that a lot of you will never make it to therapy or may not make it to a 12-step meeting or may not even know what all this is about. And who the heck do you ask about multiple affairs, compulsive masturbation? It's just not like something you ask your friends. So we're here to answer questions because we know how shameful and humiliating and uncomfortable, embarrassing all of this is. And we just want to get you the facts about treatment, about reading, education, whatever it is we can help you with in this area if we can. Sex, intimacy, relationships, and addiction. I also want to say quickly, if Tammy hasn't said it, that I have a fabulous podcast called Sex, Love, and Addiction, which is absolutely free. We have about 35 podcasts now. And I've been fortunate enough to get some really famous sexologists and amazing addiction therapists on there who are talking to me about relationships, infidelity, healing, regaining trust, all that kind of stuff that comes along with the work that we are all here to talk about. So podcasts are free, blogs are free, and our time here with you is free. Let's start answering questions.
Well, I'm going to make a little comment. Somebody asked if this was for couples, and it is and it isn't. It's one of those where sometimes there are couples that join us, which is great, but a lot of times it's individuals. And so wherever place you are, great. We're glad you're here.
Yeah, I think that to further answer that question, I think that it's not unusual for us to have a spouse on here who is married to someone who just isn't getting it, and he or she wants them to come listen, hear the expert. I've had spouses pull people by the ear to get them into the screen and talk to us, and that's fine. Sometimes I'll have an addict who's, or someone with a problem saying, I just can't get this across to my wife. She just doesn't understand it. And they need to hear something from a professional. So, if it is useful and if it serves your coupleship, if you're doing it to score points or be right, probably not as helpful. But if you're doing it to mutually learn, mutually grow, to figure out whether you want to stay together or not, or what this process is about, and what healing looks like, I think we can help.
Okay, so first question. If love addiction is not about love, then why is it called love addiction? This is sometimes confusing to the spouse of the addict. This question is from the addict.
Okay, read it one more time if you don't mind. If love...
This is from the addict.
Right.
Asking, if love addiction is not about love, then why is it called love addiction? This is sometimes confusing to the spouse of the addict.
Okay, so that's actually a fabulous question. So if you look at sex and love addiction, these behavioral addictions, and you want to ask yourself, how can they be addictive? This kind of answers that question, because it's not that someone is addicted to love. They're addicted to romance and the excitement of dating and the excitement of the new person and all the hopes and dreams that come up for all of us when we meet someone who might meet our needs, might be our partner. And the love addict, if you will, is addicted to or relies on that feeling of the new person, the exciting new romance, and all that stuff that comes at the beginning of a relationship when we really don't know each other well, and we're throwing our best side, and everybody thinks the other person is great, and all of that excitement that they write country music songs about, that's kind of what the love addict is searching for. Unfortunately, for this person who we call a love addict, and there are other ways to look at it, the challenge is when the relationship actually begins, and folks, relationships actually begin, not in the dating period, but the real relationship starts once you get to know each other. That's when a lot of love addicts say, oh, well, this isn't who I thought they were, and they back away because what they're really seeing is a real person. They're starting to see who this person is. And so the first 6 months of a relationship is really the easiest time in some ways, because if we're grooving together, then the other person just looks great and wonderful and it's easy. And it's when they become real and we start to have challenges and differentiate each other from each other and start to see things we don't like in the other. That's when the real love begins, when we begin to appreciate someone for what they are rather than our fantasies about them. And love addicts tend to live like sex addicts in fantasy about what a relationship might mean for them, as opposed to the reality of who that other person is. Love addicts are in love with the idea of love. The reality of love is a real challenge for them.
Well, and I was thinking, well, I know I was thinking, but, and addiction isn't like alcoholism isn't about alcohol. It's, it's about escaping. So that's part of the challenge is when we put these labels on it, which, are helpful in many ways, but, it can also be confusing because, alcoholism is the overuse of alcohol, but it's not because, gosh, that drink tasted so good. It's like, I want to escape.
It's for what it's not for the alcohol sake, it's for what it does for you.
Exactly.
And just remember, everybody, if you had the experience of that first love or that perfect relationship you thought you had when you were in high school, whatever, everything was moonbeams and starlight and you couldn't stop thinking about them. And it's a great way to put everything else in your life on hold and just focus on some other person or experience. That's not healthy love. That's escape.
So this one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to read through and maybe we'll do pieces of it. So this is a woman who's in her mid-30s, and she is a combat vet. She identifies as having a masturbation addiction. I fantasize about unavailable men. I'm healthy, love to exercise, but feel too much or too little when it comes to men. So more of it, she's new to SLAA, but lives in a remote area, so will not be attending meetings here. But we're going to tell you more about meetings online. She recognizes as a sex and love addict. However, since her divorce 4 years ago, very violent in every way, she feels dissociated, numb. I am alone a lot, but have great girlfriends and go out of my way for them. As far as men go, I've had relationships with randoms or average once or twice a year and then nothing. And she's confused what's going on. I need the term, or I read the term sexual anorexic, which I know you'll talk about. I don't feel lonely, but I feel aloneness, hoping for guidance. So,
well, Tammy, you're going to have to keep coming back to the questions.
Yes, because there's a lot. Yeah.
Let me just touch on what happened at the end for me. I just want to remind everybody that, what every piece of research says in every culture on human beings is that we do better in relationships. We are healthier, we are more creative, we live longer, we tend to be more successful and happier people. And although I will say if you're in a bad relationship, and the research also says this, and you're really, really unhappy, you don't do any better for being in the relationship than if you were single. But those of us who are in relationships that we value do better. Pair bonds do better than single people. So it is a goal in life to find partnership and or a deep, enduring sense of community and connection, because it is with other people that we do better than on our own. So it is important that you pursue dating, that you pursue sexuality, not only because it'll make you a healthier person, because the opposite of addiction in love, the opposite of addiction in an eating disorder is not to stop eating, it's to engage in healthy eating. These addictions behavioral addictions are not like drugs and alcohol where you just stop and you put it away and you never do it again. I expect that if you have an eating disorder, you want to engage in healthy eating. If you have a sexual intimacy disorder, I don't want you to stop having sex forever. I want you to engage in healthy sex, which has to be defined. So, it may be well for you that, number one, I think you're a little early in the process, like when you have been going to some meetings and you have a sponsor and you have other women who are supportive of you, you'll get a better idea of how to nurture your way into a structured way of dating. And I believe that it is just as much your sponsor's responsibility or the people in your 12-step program, not just to stop you from doing things that are destructive, but also help guide you based on your history and their understanding of you toward what is healthy. So that not only should recovery for love and sex addiction be about stopping doing the problem sex and love behaviors, it should also be and needs to be about encouraging healthy behavior. And healthy sexuality and healthy romance with someone who is available and you're attracted to and engaged with is a good thing. However, it sounds like you got a little bit of trauma going on. Trauma from violence in a relationship, trauma from being a combat survivor, You have a lot of big T traumas on your list, and oftentimes those of us who have trauma will isolate with that trauma. We will go off on ourselves like a wounded animal. And it does feel more comforting in some ways to be alone, because getting close to people brings up the threat of losing them or getting let down or being hurt or all of that. It's not a good idea to avoid relationships and sex because you're afraid you'll end up alone, or you're afraid you'll pick the wrong person. You need to learn how to pick the right person and learn how to enjoy time alone, and then dating will go better. And you will do all of that with the support and guidance of people in your 12-step program. So Tammy, you were going to mention a few ways that she might find help online, even in a remote area.
Yeah, we have a lot of resources on sexandrelationshiphealing.com, including these webinars. We don't have a meeting yet, a drop-in group yet for female sex and love
But
addicts.
it's coming.
But it's coming. We're working on it. I'm working on identifying some moderators.
I just wrote you about Tammy. I think I just wrote you last week and said I have a couple of ideas for people for sex. Yes. So we're working on the women's room.
Yes, we are working on that. But as Rob mentioned, and intherooms.com, he's on there on Friday nights, and there are a lot of women that join that meeting because it's a safe space for them. So I'd invite you to consider joining that one as well.
And also I want to say that SLAA and SAA and SCA, they all have online meetings and telephonic meetings. So you can go to a meeting every single day and not leave your house. I mean, we're getting to that point. And that's a lot of what we're trying to foster in this environment is community. And even if you don't have resources and you live in the most remote place, you should be able to hang out with a bunch of women who are working on this issue online, get their advice, their guidance, and be able to check with them privately during the week. That's what we're trying to encourage the creation of. So keep coming back. We are here to support you. Also, if you go on Sex and Relationship Healing and you go to the drop-down menu under resources, there are several books. There's a section for female sex and love addicts, and there are at least 3 or 4 books by people that Tammy and I know well, who have women who have worked through their own recovery. Some are therapists, some are regular folks, whatever, and they've written about it. And I think just reading what other women go through is really, really helpful. And for you sex and love addicts, by the way, I want to say that I always found that the big book of SLAA, the book they use in the SLAA meetings, and you can buy it online, just go to Amazon, sexandloveaddicts.com. I mean, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, you'll find it on Amazon. It's a really good book. Like, they give a lot of stories about love gone wrong, sex gone wrong, or like a lot of places to identify, a lot of ways to say, oh, that could be me. And I always find that's a good way for people to get help, is to identify with things that they're reading. So push yourself to get to more connections, and it's just going to get better and better. And I'm so glad you're here. Please come back.
I agree, and I'm really glad you've got some great girlfriends. That's a very hopeful thing, because girlfriends, really make life a lot better. So.
Well, can I make my statement, Kami?
Yes, you may.
Kami, okay. Yeah. So here's the real deal. I think that the way that healthy women survive men, period, because we're difficult, is with each other. I really think that you guys turn to each other all the time, and you're like, oh my God, my husband, oh my God, my boyfriend, and I'm not discounting the lesbians or the men, but I'm saying women love to talk about their men and their problems with their men. And you can go, as a colleague of mine, Stan Tatkin, said on one of our recent podcasts, he said, you can go to the most remote village in the world where they're eating rice and fully on substance and have no contact with the outside world. And when you go sit and listen to what a bunch of women are talking about, they're talking about their men. And that's just sort of how it works. So having a full support of women who get you and will protect you and love you makes it a lot easier to date men.
That's true. And we don't always just complain about our men. So
but it's a common topic.
Yes, I agree. Okay, next question. I'm currently 250 days clean. Yay. Woo! My partner and I successfully did our disclosure and are progressing in our relationship. However, I am currently struggling with self-forgiveness. I constantly question if I've done enough and if my past could return to haunt me. What can I do to combat these negative thoughts?
Well, I would accept them. Your past may come back to haunt you. You don't know. Someone may come out of the woodwork, something might happen, someone might remember something, someone might come out of the workplace, someone might talk to your spouse. I learned, and I think all of us hopefully learn deeply and well in this process, that we don't have any control over the future or events that are out of our hands. And that kind of anxiety about what if someone finds out, what if is the kind of stuff that drives our addiction. And you know, I have made mistakes and I pay for them, and you have made mistakes and you too might pay for them. I wouldn't expect anything otherwise. So rather than saying, oh my God, what if things catch up with me? I would say, well, things might catch up with me, so let me anticipate that now and how I'm going to handle it, rather than thinking, oh my God, what if? And if you can prevent it, like you could find a way to disclose something to your spouse that they're going to find out, it's always to your advantage to tell the truth first rather than being found out later. So, you know, I think there's nothing you can do about your past. You can regret it, you can learn from it, but you can't eliminate it. And to live in the fear of it reoccurring is to not be present in the life that you're trying to build for yourself now. So let go of the things you don't have any control over, breathe, meditate, talk to people, but ultimately you're gonna have to keep turning it over and turning it over until you realize no matter how much I worry, there's nothing I can do about it, and this probably is gonna happen anyway. And once you accept that it's gonna all come out and you go through it all in your head, then if it does or when it does, it's just what you expected. Because a friend of mine told me a long time ago, long before I entered recovery, behaviors have consequences. And, you know, even though you made in the best recovery and life is better and you're being the best person you can be and you're helping other people and all that's wonderful, things in the past may come up and you are still accountable to them today, no matter how much better you're doing today. And you know what? That's a good thing.
And I think of the promises from the 12 steps. I don't know if you're attending 12 steps, but part of the promises is we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on them. And for my own journey, that is true. While I'm not thrilled with the things that I did, they're all part of my story, and they are what drove me to get help so that I could be different. And if that's what it took to get to this spot, I'm willing to accept the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, this is from a partner. I had disclosure with my spouse and it was not 100% truthful, and I have since been uncovering lots more that was not accounted for. I've told my SA spouse I expect 100% honest and complete disclosure in person with their CSAT therapist. Previous one was over the phone 3 months ago. We are 5 months into recovery. We'll be flying down to see our CSAT therapist in the next month or so. My SA husband says that the last 3.5 years duration we've been together was a blur to him and doesn't remember who all he has had extramarital affairs with, let alone he doesn't recall the extramarital encounters that I have brought forward to him with proof since the original disclosure. And the question, is this a possibility that SA spouse can magically not recall who and how many times they had cheated over a 3.5 year span?
Yes and no. So let me see the yes first. When I was out there as a sex addict in my 20s, which was a long time ago, I'm grateful to say, I was racking up some big numbers and I was acting out quite regularly. And I couldn't tell you a few years later how often I had walked into a strip club, or how often I went to a massage parlor, or how often I went to a porn shop, or, you know, it was so frequent and so anonymous and so casual to me. You know, all I could say really was maybe 3 times a week or something like that. So on the one hand, if somebody is a very active casual sex addict with a lot of anonymous sex and casual sex, it's not unusual that they won't remember every detail of every time. That can happen, especially if you're doing, you know, look, if I asked you what you had for dinner last week every day, and you might think, oh, but having sex with people, that's more meaningful to the person who's doing it than simply eating dinner, not to a sex addict. To us, it's like I had dinner and I had sex and then I talked to my kids. You know, it doesn't carry any weight for us like it does for you as a partner. So it is very possible that we do all kinds of things, stopped off here, went here, jacked off there. We don't remember. However, it is the responsibility of that therapist to go through in detail, in my belief. So you mentioned CSAT. CSAT is a certified addiction therapist, sex addiction therapist. These are people who are trained to do this work. They're most of the work people who do disclosures. And we are trained when we do disclosures I will spend 6 weeks. The reason we don't give you disclosure on day one is because I'll spend 6 weeks with that addict going through their life timeline. You know, where did they go to school? Who were they living with? What was their life like? Who were their friends? Year by year for the last 30 years. So we can, and what year was your kid born? And what year did your parent die? And we're looking at as much as we can their life history and then pulling all the sex addiction behavior out of it. And so if a therapist does that, it's likely that they will get at least clear generalities. Like, during these years, I was stopping at the massage parlor 3 times a week. I don't know who I saw what I did, but that's where I was going at that time, something like that. You may not get every time, every person, every situation, but you should have a really good idea of how frequently, what kinds of behavior, where, who some of these people were, but every single detail you're never going to get, nor are we going to remember, and that is true. However, let me say one more thing.
Yeah.
We lie. And we keep secrets from you, and there are things we don't want you to know. And you will not know if we're keeping that one thing we're just afraid is going to push you over the edge and are not telling you that. And that's why we do formal disclosures with therapists and all of that. Because, addicts aren't always the most trustworthy people when it comes to telling the truth. And I have to tell you that we don't want to do disclosure. When you look at the research, like when you go to addicts and you ask them to do disclosures, somewhere like 60% say, I'd rather not, thank you very much. And then after doing it, like 98% they said they were glad to. Partners are much more eager for disclosure because you guys want to know what happened, and therefore 90% of you before disclosure are eager for it, and 98% of you after think it was a good idea. But the reality is for a committed long-term couple, it is the best opportunity, if you're both healthy enough to tolerate it, to clear the boards and regrow your relationship.
And you're talking about a formal disclosure done with qualified therapists in as optimal of manner as possible, because
while both partners are getting support, not just he's in therapy or you're in, but you're both getting support so you can work through what you've heard. So, I've heard disclosures where, some guy's in treatment somewhere and they call a spouse and do disclosure over the phone. And then I just think, well, that's an opportunity for that spouse to go kill themselves. And I have just delivered a reason for them to do it, So I would never do disclosure without a partner having support, without them being in a group, without their having because you guys need a place to go. If you're done with us, or at least done with us for a little while, that doesn't mean you don't need support and love and nurturing. And so, if I'm doing disclosure, I want to know, like, how did you guys get here? How are you guys going to drive to the office, and who's going to drive back, and in what car? And, we really want to get down to the detail of how you're going to take care of yourself after.
And who's going to stay, if you don't stay at the house together, who's going to stay? Obviously the partner should get to stay at the home, and the other person has an alternate plan for living arrangements, for the near term. So yeah, a lot needs to go into this. I've had several recently where people did I call it a vomit disclosure, where they just want to feel better, and then the poor partner is left traumatized. And so it really does require, I agree, it's so healing, but it really does require work on both parties, and a period of time where you can be reasonably sure that the addict isn't going to just relapse, and this is going to happen again in a short amount of time.
And I want to say, disclosure is not done for the purpose of forgiveness.
Right.
This is not an amends or an apology. It's not his job to be apologizing to you or saying, will you please forgive me? If that's in there, the therapist is not doing their job, because the goal is simply for you to get an inventory. This is a history of what happened in our relationship that I didn't know about, so that you can have a better sense of what's gone on, and if you do or don't want to continue with the relationship, which is impossible for you to really decide if you don't have that information. So, but it's not, after disclosure, you're going to be angry. And your addict is going to be scared. And that's why we schedule sessions after the disclosure, the day after, the week after, to see how it follow up with you guys. But we don't do disclosure if couples aren't staying together, period. We don't do disclosure unless the partner has support. There are many, many ways we do it to protect you. And so and one more thing, disclosure, as Tammy said, sometimes as an addict, I can feel awful about what I did, and you're just being so sweet to me tonight, and I just really want to tell you the secret so we can be closer. And then I tell you this thing and you're devastated, which, by the way, isn't everything, it's just part of it. And then I think, well, I can't tell you any more of it because you'll even be more devastated. But then your partner's thinking, well, that's everything. Phew, now I know. And then they find out more. And the worst thing for any partner, I believe, is what I would call staggered disclosure, where someone says, oh, here's everything. This is everything. And you start to think, okay, now I know what's gone on. I can decide if we're going to go together or not be together. How are we going to go ahead as a family? And then 3 weeks later, you find out more. And it's for the partner, it's just like there's no bottom there. They can never find it. They're always in free fall. And so it's kind of one of the reasons we do disclosure is to get everything out and be done with it.
So, sorry, I'm going to cut to, there was one that was put in the chat because the question and answer wasn't working for this person. So the question is, how long does it take for an essay to get their head out of their took us and stop being narcissistic in denial and avoid? How can a marriage heal with an SA acting like this and saying that we just need to move forward? I'm getting resentful, tired, and seeing no end. 40 years married and 1 year separated. His small lies don't stop. And I feel he's becoming resentful from me when I set boundaries and speak up for how I feel. He says I keep saying all the things he's doing or saying wrong. It's becoming a hurtful dance, and I feel no safety and still triggered. Short of brain surgery, when will an SA ever get it?
Well, first of all, how long has it been since this has all come out? I'm curious.
It sounds like a year separated. So I have I'm thinking that's kind of but long-term marriage.
Okay. So, I wrote a book. I've written 10. I wrote a book called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship-saving guide for men caught cheating. And the reason I wrote this book is because I have worked with men who've cheated on women. I've worked with all kinds of people who cheat, but I've worked particularly with men who've cheated on women for 25 years. And I have never really found men very good at apologizing or owning their stuff with their partners. And so I wrote a book for men to understand the reality of what a betrayed partner is going through and what it will take to heal that relationship. And I just saw your note. You said you bought it and he won't read it. So here's the deal. From my belief system, if this man wants to work things out with you, especially if you're not living together, like if I wanted to live with you and I'd broken your heart, I would do everything and anything I could to try to make it up to you. I would attend whatever meetings you wanted. I would try to get you whatever information you wanted. I would call you when you needed me to. You could track my phone on GPS. I don't care, because I want to get back with you and I want to work this out, and I have harmed you. And I know I'm one down in this relationship because I've harmed you. I'm in the doghouse. So I'll do whatever it takes to get better. If your husband is not in that place, why do you want to restore your marriage? Is my question to you. Because I want to be married to someone who understands how valuable I am to them, who understands the pain that I've caused, I want to be married to someone who understands the pain they can cause, understand how important I am to them, values my upset and anger when they've hurt me, and is really working to try to restore my trust. If your husband is not doing the things to restore your trust, like being open, being honest, being real, being accountable, and realizing that you might be angry for a year or so, but instead is blaming you for your anger and dismissing your feelings and asking you to just get over it, that is someone who doesn't get it. He doesn't understand how much he's hurt you. He doesn't understand what he has to lose. And you're already not living together. So, there's not much of a big step left, I'm sorry to say. And I would be sitting around and saying, look, if you don't begin to show that you're doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C, I'm going to get out of this relationship. Because I have no reason to hang around and wait for someone to realize that I'm valuable. I have no reason to have I don't need to hang around and wait for someone to realize that I don't deserve to be hurt. And so, if you don't see those indications coming and coming fast, and his not being willing to read a book that would help you heal, tells me he doesn't give a shit about you. So he's probably still out doing all the stuff he did before and lying to you about it still. And I'm really sorry to say that. And I don't know you and I don't know him. So that may not be true. But you're hearing my feelings now. I get upset when I hear that a loving, caring spouse has been wounded and the partner is not willing to make it better, but just expects that you're going to get over it. Tammy.
Yes.
Someone asked a question. I have to say I peeked. So I wanted to answer this question that I saw. So I saw a question about a woman who said that she's doing a lot of work on herself and she doesn't understand this kind of idea that everyone keeps saying, why aren't you dating? Why aren't you dating? And she feels like she's growing on her own and she's building deep relationships and dating isn't important to her. And so why should she be dating? And my answer to you is you don't have to. There is no priority or commitment in life to dating. You don't have to pair bond. And I know for me personally, and with a lot of clients that I've worked with, it can take years of healing before you really feel ready to date and open to dating. Now, someone asked the question earlier about sexual anorexia. Tammy mentioned it. Anorexia is a term from the eating disorder field. I don't really think it belongs in sexual disorders. It has a very specific meaning related to food. But I do know people who are romantically and sexually avoidant. They are intimacy avoidant. But those aren't people who've recently been wounded, damaged, harmed, and they're licking their wounds, those are people who struggle with intimacy all their lives. And some of those people avoid sex and relationships because it's just too difficult, or they are always dating the wrong people, or they're always getting let down, or, and the answer to healing yourself around dating and relationships will never come while you're single. I've walked into many a 12-step meeting where I saw someone sitting there and say, hey, I have 12 years of recovery. And that's unusual in sex addiction meetings. We usually slip a bit more. We get 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 10 years, whatever. And inevitably, when I see someone with 12 to 15, 20 years, I ask them this question, and inevitably, they give me the same answer. I'll say, tell me about what it's been like to be sober for 12 years, 16 years, 14 years. And they'll say, well, I haven't dated or had sex in 12 or 14 years. That's not sobriety to me. I'd rather have a slip. I'd rather do it wrong than not be engaged with loving in life. So yes, there is a line, which is you need to take care of yourself, need to grow, need to nurture yourself. But there is a line, a couple of years into recovery, where you probably should start going out and start dating, even if you're not feeling fully ready. Because a date just means having a cup of coffee with someone. It doesn't mean sex. It doesn't mean moonlight. Doesn't mean glasses of wine. It can simply mean getting to know someone and then maybe going for a walk with them. And if you look at dating like that, it's a lot easier to consider I can begin to get to know some people under the right circumstances rather than romance and dating and, Valentine's Day. That's not what we're talking about. But I do think that if you go too long and you avoid romantic and sexual intimacy, at a certain point, it just becomes really hard to negotiate a relationship with someone else when you're so used to being on your own.
And I wanted to respond to because it was, why aren't you dating? And you get upset, understandably, that people are looking at you with pity that you're not in a relationship. And, I think for me, it's like, I have to not care about somebody else's look or their thing. I was thinking I probably would come up with, I'm dating myself, or some little, smart alecky quip, or why is this important to you? Or, like in not a mean way, but I think at some point you just have to go, that's about them and not about you. If you're good with what you're doing, then that's about them.
And I have to admit, I'm guilty of this. And it had nothing to do with recovery or addiction, but I think every woman that I'm friends with who's in their 20s and 30s and single, I'm always saying, who are you dating? How's dating? Because I assume that that's an important part of their life and they want to tell me about it. So I'm opening it up because most young people are dating, but you don't have to take it as a personal insult. I would take it as, wow, they care about me and they really want to know what's going on in my life and they want to support me. And so you can respond like that. Like, why aren't you dating? Well, I really appreciate how much you care about me. And thanks for thinking, I'm having a really good time on my own right now. And look at it rather than being intrusive as an effort to care about you.
That's a much nicer way of doing it. Thank you for doing that. Because mine would be a little smart alecky. So, okay. So this is my husband. So this is a long-term marriage. We've been married 39 years. Husband consistently leaves evidence of relapse that I invariably find and continues to get blindsided and re-traumatized. First discovery was 2013. Found out he'd been deep in the weeds with hardcore porn. Lots more. He wouldn't speak to me. The discovery followed years of domestic violence. So the discovery was like a compounded trauma. My question is now, does my husband leave evidence for me out of wanting to be found out? Is it a way to tell on himself? Is he punishing me or acting out in defiance towards me? As he said he did when he was enmeshed with his mother as a teenager. How can I understand what this behavior means? It's so terribly hurtful. And she's got more too, but let's start there.
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry that you're living with someone who doesn't understand how the simplest thing can really leave you hurting. And some of these things are not simple compared to your history, and I'm sorry you live with someone who could be physically abusive and now emotionally abusive and seem to not care, But I will say this, I don't think it matters why. You're not a therapist, you're not his sponsor, you're not his support group. It's not for you to figure out why. Your job is to figure out, how do I feel about this? Is this something I can live with? Do I want to continue to tolerate this? How do I take better care of myself if I choose to stay in this situation and it doesn't change? How do I take care of myself if I choose to leave this situation because it's not changing? there's not much you can do to interpret his behavior that's going to help you. It doesn't matter, honestly. And I'm the therapist, right? 27 years of my own therapy, 4 years of analysis, PhD. It doesn't matter why he's doing it. It's hurting you. And you're hurting in your own home, just like you were when he was hitting you. And that is a greater concern to me, that you're questioning why he's hurting you, as opposed to saying, it is not okay with me that anybody continue to hurt me. And I, again, I have little empathy for a man who can be abusive, try to work on himself, and then just turns out around as abusive again, and then won't apologize for it, doesn't own it, can't see their part in it. That's just a really hard thing to heal. And, I won't tell you what to do with your life, I promise, but I will tell you this. I can tell you from all these white hairs on my chin, life is short, and it's going by fast, and it is not worth sitting in a miserable, painful, abusive relationship and trying to figure out how I can make this better. Sometimes it's better to cut your losses. And I don't mean that with any ill will or your husband may be just going through a phase, and who knows? I don't know what's going on in your relationship, but I do know this. We deserve love. We deserve joy. We deserve fun. We don't need to go home every day and be left guessing whether our partner cares at all, or why they don't seem to care. I want someone around who's caring, or I'd rather be alone. So I would ask you to be looking at that. If he isn't able to keep his side of the street clean, it doesn't matter why. What matters is, what are you going to do to take care of yourself and your family?
She asked, would hypnosis or a lie detector test put this to rest once and for all?
Well, I was thinking a gun, but that's
I know, but
sorry,
I was thinking,
but I think that would.
I don't think he would show up for it. I don't think he would care. So, I'm with Rob, and I would hate for you to be here a year from now asking the exact same questions and having gone through another year of him doing all of this, behavior, and you being on the brunt of it. I just would hate that.
Which means that there's two things for you, and we don't know who you are. If you have the resources to live alone or to leave this person, and you may not, you may be a woman who needs that paycheck from him to make sure your kids have clothes on their back. And if that's the case, you're going to have to figure out how to live in an abusive relationship and try to avoid the abuse and get your needs met elsewhere in a variety of ways. But if you have the resource to think about not being together, then I would be really thinking, what are my bottom lines? What are the things that are absolutely unacceptable to me? And if there are things like, I come home and the porn is on the computer and the kids can find it, or I can find it, or I feel like it's being flaunted, or there's no respect for my dignity. You might get to the point where you think, I don't care what he does. I want him around to parent our kids. I want him around for when things are good. I know we're never going to have great love, but let's get through, whatever. But I wouldn't want to be around to be actively hurt every day. And I think that you deserve better than that. And I'm sure you've been told that before.
Okay, so next question. When dealing with process addiction, the goal is to develop new behaviors. I have to find new ways of processing my feelings, my goals, my likes and wants. How important is community to my recovery? Would you say community is the answer to addiction?
I don't think community is the answer to addiction, but I think without community, it's very hard to heal. There are many answers to addiction. They have to do with personal growth, commitment, learning, reading, writing, journaling, meditating, praying. I mean, there are a lot of pieces to recovery, self-reflection, therapy, but in the essence of all of it, it's about, if you have a problem related to connection, related to relationships and intimacy, you're not going to heal that problem on your own. Not if you're married to someone with an intimacy problem, not if you're a person with the intimacy problem. You can only heal, if you have an eating problem, you're not going to heal it by not eating. And you're not going to solve an intimacy problem by isolating. So community is the engine for recovery. It's the power. It's the thing that drives hope forward and encouragement and it drives away shame, because I'm not alone with this problem. There are others. So community is the engine, but it's not the sole driver. But without it, you don't get recovery.
Well, and if there's a couple of things. There's the recovery community, which teaches you how to do this in a different way, because the ways I was doing life before were, we call maladaptive. They are they weren't really working so well. So, but there's also community in, and I've shared this before, like I go to the gym and I've got my little social structure and it's doing a healthy thing with healthy people. And there, you know, there's lots of different things. I was talking to somebody earlier today and they like to mountain bike. So they do it with a group of friends, you know, all of those things that you do that are healthy and replace, you know, so it's a community and it's attachment, but it isn't all, you know, always all
Heavy.
about 12-step. Yeah.
It isn't all heavy. And I would say to your partners also that, you know, if you're living with someone who doesn't meet your emotional needs, you need to build a community of understanding women and support if you're a woman who will meet your needs. It's not like you're say, well, I'll just put my needs aside. That's not good recovery for you. You have to say, I have all these needs. They're not being met by my partner. So I have a need to feel appreciated or valued or important or special or considered or get hugs, or all our human needs are available to us without having to be sexual or romantic, except for the ones that involve sex and romance.
From your experience working with male sex addicts, have you come across a sex addict who is able to maintain long-term sobriety without attending 12-step programs or attending sporadically? I guess what I want to say is, are 12-step programs a must when recovering for sex addiction?
Well, there is a saying in recovery, actually it's a saying I've always liked, has nothing to do with recovery, that what you resist persists. So if you're resisting joining a community of people, like-minded people with similar goals, who are using a well-worn and well-proven process to heal, I mean, that's your choice, but you do need to find some community for healing, whether that's a faith-based community or a therapy group, or, you know, but because the problem has to do with how we relate and how we get along and how we feel about ourselves, and because we tend to be kind of entrapped in our own vision of ourselves, you really need other people to give advice, to give direction, to give support, to give hope, to give encouragement, and someone to call when you feel like having sex with a stranger and you know that's not a good idea. You kind of need someone to say, why don't you go over for coffee? So, you know, it doesn't have to be a 12-step community. The reason 12-step communities are useful is because because everyone is there for one reason and one reason only, which is to heal from this issue. And they're all basically following a similar path of healing. And to be in a group of people who are following a well-worn path of healing is a pretty good advantage, and it reduces your shame. Because you know that, God, I'm the worst person in the world. Look what I did to my wife or whatever. And then you look over at some guy who did that to his wife and you think, well, I guess I'm not the only shitty person in the world. And that makes you feel better. So, you know, for every reason, community is necessary. I don't think it has to be 12-step, but there are many kinds of communities, but you do need one. And you need one where people can give you advice, direction, and hold your heart when it's hurting.
And my life was saved by a 12-step program. So, you know, that people shared their experience, strength, and hope with me. And they made me have hope that it could be different if I would do just some of the things that they suggested. So that really worked for me.
And I want to add to that I started like a nice Jewish boy in therapy for my problems. And I learned some things, but I never stopped acting out sexually. It was only when I got to 12-step programs that I realized what the problem was, how to deal with the problem, you know, and a lot of the therapy things that I've developed over the last 20 years are because I got it, you know, and I got it like Tammy did in 12-step programs. I didn't go to a treatment center. I didn't, you know, and my therapist didn't know anything about this stuff. So I had to figure out my own way, but I had other guides, other male role models as guides and mentors. And let me say one more thing about 12-step or whatever kind of group you're in. Unfortunately, male sex addicts, if you're heterosexual, you tend to avoid deep, enduring relationships with men, and you tend to look for the cute girl across the room. And unfortunately, if you're a female sex addict, you're not looking in the loving arms of that nurturing woman in your support group. You are going to look past her to the cute guy who's over her shoulder, thinking that's where my healing is. And what we tend to not realize it is within our own non-sexual, like-minded relationships, non-romantic, non-sexual, where we're going to find our healing. Because there are other dedicated people who are on the same road as us.
Is time apart beneficial after husband's affair?
I don't know. I mean, if it's beneficial for you, I think it would be, if I were married to someone that had an affair and then we were separated, it would be hard for me because I wouldn't fully believe that they weren't seeing the other person. That's what would go on in my head. So it would be very hard for me to have time alone for my partner who'd been having an affair because I wouldn't believe that they weren't seeing both of us. I just wouldn't believe them. Now, I wouldn't believe that if they were living with me either, but I'd even be more suspicious that they weren't. So, I think, and I can't gauge what's good for your relationship. Sometimes relationships are so hot, so toxic, so you guys really need a break, but sometimes a break can mean someone sleeping on the couch and someone sleeping in the bedroom, and we just make sure the kids get taken care of, and we're really not dealing with anything heavy unless we go to a therapy group or something like that. And, you can survive superficially with a partner. But separation, I can't say whether it's good or not good for your relationship. I'll tell you this. I left somebody many, many years ago thinking, boy, he's never, we're going to go a few weeks and I'm going to get that call, I can't live without you. And 3 weeks went by, no call. And then 5 weeks went by, no call. It took me about 6 months to realize that I wasn't the most important person in this person's life and they were never going to call. So there is something to thinking, to the thought that if I withdraw my love and I withdraw my caring, they're going to be so desperate that they're going to need me, call me. And, that may not be true. So I would be looking at the reasons for the separation for me and for this other person and decide if they're valid and if they serve the goal. If the goal is to move the relationship ahead, is separation serving that? If the goal is to get to know each other again, is separation serving that? It may. It just depends on where and how and under what rules and when is the separation over? Is there a date? Is there a plan? All of those things are important. So I can't fully answer your question. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to combine two questions on this one. What are some ways to build trust and intimacy? That's one. What things can my husband do to show me he is working on himself? Examples, reading out of the doghouse and going to SLAA meetings and fellowship. So because I think those really go.
What was the first? I got the second part.
The first one was ways to build trust and intimacy. And the other is ways he's showing me he's working on himself, which I think builds trust and intimacy.
Well, I think you're right, Tammy. Thanks for combining it because I think they're kind of the same. And I don't think I don't think that what I would gauge my partner's recovery on, if my partner were a sex addict, is how often they go to meetings and what they say when they come back from therapy. To me, that's a given that they're, if they have a problem, that they're going to a support group and that they're in therapy. And that's a given. What I'm looking at for my husband or wife's recovery is, and this is what would tell me how they're doing, are they showing up on time for the things they're supposed to be doing? When they say they're going to be somewhere, are they there? When they forget to take out the trash or forget to buy the groceries, do they own it? Or are they still lying and manipulating and, or blaming me? You didn't tell me. Yes, I did. It's how they treat me and how they treat the relationship that tells me so much more than what I see and what they're doing in their recovery. It's a bare minimum that someone who's cheated, lied, and broken your heart and ruined your family needs to go to a support group for a while of some kind and needs some therapy. That's a given if you can afford it. But the signs of recovery that I'd be looking for are related to partnership, have more to do with, is this person I'm married to, involved with, do they have a passionate commitment to being in our relationship? And are they trying to show up for it in as many ways as possible? Because I don't care how many meetings someone goes to or how often they're in therapy, if they're still lying to me, if they're still treating me badly, if they're still trying to convince me that I didn't see the truth, and they're still just being generally a jerk, that's much better message and information about their recovery than how often they go to a meeting or how often they go to therapy.
Okay, so I'm going to combine a couple more. So one is I have stopped all physical contact with my husband because of his consistent slips and relapses. He never, in all caps, tells me, and I trip over each discovery. He still wants to have sex. In one of your podcasts, you say, why would I want to have sex with someone I don't trust? I feel the same. Why doesn't he get this? And then the other is, how long is too long for me to refrain from being sexually intimate with my husband? I often put up a guard and want to be alone away from him. Not sure what exactly is healthy for us. His affair occurred 2.5 years ago.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, let me speak to the second question first. And Tammy, I may have to bring you back to the first one.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
First of all, I think, one of the things that I can tell all of you is that when you've been cheated on, the resolution of that betrayal can take 1.5 years. In other words, it can be 1 year or more before you begin to feel trusting or have any interest in being sexual. And so, unfortunately, most addicts want that your anger and disappointment to be over in a few weeks. And part of what reassures us that we're forgiven is getting sex from you. And so someone who's asking for a lot of sex from you, maybe what they're really looking for is reassurance. Are you going to be there? Are you going to love me if I can't figure it? And I think it is right. Now, I think I'm in the first question now. I think it is right to say, you know what? Until you've stopped all this acting out, I don't trust you and I don't want to be sexual with you. And yes, I say in every podcast and every chance I get that there's only one reason to be sexual with someone, unless it's a casual stranger and you're just getting off. Anyone you know and care about, the only reason to be sexual with them is because you desire them and you love them. Or you like them, or you want to explore and deepen your relationship. It is not okay to have sex to reassure yourself or to reassure them. It's not okay to have sex to try to stop them from doing something or keep them from acting out. It's not okay to have sex because you think if I have enough sex with them, maybe they won't do this anymore. They're going to do it whether you dance on the head of a pin. I stand by my statement. I don't think it's healthy to have sex with people you don't trust. And that may include someone you've lived with for 20 years. When trust is restored, I would begin to look at the possibility of sex, but how do you look at sex? I don't care if you were married for 20 years, had sex for 20 years, and had 12 kids. When you are re-engaging this part of your relationship after pain and brokenness, you don't start with sex. You start with holding hands. You start with going to dinner. And then when you, the partner, and this is very important, when you're at dinner and you want to have a nice date and try to get to know each other, but for whatever reason you're feeling distant and uncomfortable, and you got to say that. Like, you got to say that to him. Like, you know what? I know we came out of a romantic evening, but quite honestly, I'm feeling distant and uncomfortable, and I wish I didn't, but I do, and I'm not sure it has. It isn't about your being ready to be the loving partner who's forgiven him or her. This is a series of successive approximations, or it's a process, not a destination. So you shouldn't move from I don't trust him to sex. You want to move from I don't trust him to beginning to trust, or I feel more trusting. Maybe we can go on a date. Maybe we can hold each other's hands. Maybe we'll sleep together. Maybe we'll hold each other, but still not have sex. I wouldn't let someone into my body or put my body into someone else's body unless I felt trust for them. If my goal was to deepen a relationship, it's just that simple. And I would never let someone badger me into being sexual in a marriage. That to me just tells me that he doesn't get it at all.
Okay. Well, and I was thinking with the one that has been, 2.5 years with all of this, I'm thinking, I wonder if you're sensing that something is still amiss. So that would be definitely something to.
That could be, and yes, and also, it can, partners we can hold on to stuff longer than we need to. Maybe you've had previous losses, like a father or another caregiver or someone who really loved you who broke your heart or let you down. Sometimes when that happens in our relationships, it can bring up all the fear and loss of the past. And so sometimes partners have to think about, okay, well, how much of this belongs to what happened between us and how much has to do with all the feelings that are coming up for me from past betrayals and past hurts. But yeah, if he's doing all the right stuff and you're still feeling really, really distant, I think that's what couples therapy is for, and that's what sex therapy is for. And certainly I do see couples that have restored trust and restored a healthy sexual relationship, absolutely.
So 2 women asking, since dating apps, so 2 more questions I'm combining. Since dating apps are really problematic for me, how do you recommend we even seek out dating or finding healthy guys to date? And the next question was, do you have a reference for dating, how to date, and how to listen to our instincts when we observe red flags? So
I actually give this response a lot. I don't think it's about, I don't think you'll ever be ready for dating on your own. I know I was never ready, nor ready today would I be for any kind of relationship on my own. So if you're an addict and you have struggled with a dating site, the fault is not the dating site. Now, let me try this. If you're on a quick hookup site, and I'm not going to name them, but the ones that tell you who's local and wants to have sex right now, you're not on a dating site, okay? So if you're on a site that allows you to connect with someone that evening for sex, you're not on a dating site, But if you're on an eHarmony or a Match, they're fairly protective and fairly filtered. So the question I would have is, what is your problem with the dating app? Like, there's nothing wrong with dating apps, but the way I, as an addict, would use a dating app is I would call my sponsor, call my group, say, I'm going to get online, I'm going to put up a profile. I would go over the profile with my group and my people. Then I would put it up, and then every response I got, before I responded, I would ask my people, my girlfriends, my sponsor, how is this response? Is this a good response? And then if you actually get to the date, you promise that the people that are supporting you, that you're not going to have sex on the date, that you're going to, hold hands and blah, 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 and then you're going to call them when you're done with the date. So the answer to dating is not that you're going to figure it out on your own after taking some time out. The deal is that you will never be a good dater because we're not good daters. But with the support of other people who know us, who know our stuff, who are guiding us, just like, if an alcoholic said to me, I've been a month sober and I was thinking about hanging out in a bar, I'd probably say, I don't think that's a great idea, but let me tell you how you can spend time with people without going to a bar. So it's the same thing. It's like we need direction about healthy dating, healthy, safe boundaries while dating, and so that we don't get too far led down the road where we get lost. So again, a lot of people seem to think that dating is sex, or they think that intimacy is sex. And what all of us really need to work on is not so much sex, but really deeply being known and understood by others and letting them be known and understood by us. Intimacy is what we need to work on, not necessarily sex.
Well, and I was thinking too, for me, it was important to go engage in the things that I wanted to engage in. And I met people, men and women, and they knew people. And, quite frankly, eventually a friend of mine said, I think you would like this guy. And she was right, but it was because I was involved in things that I wanted to do anyway. So I found someone with similar interests. So, and I got to make new friends and experience fun things that I wanted to do.
So Tammy, yes, in the process of discovering yourself and enjoying your life, you too might just find a person. And if you're single for years and years, then you might need to get more active in dating. Tell your friends you're looking to date, But I agree. I wanted to read one thing, Tammy, that I wanted to end with, because I think it's time to end. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So I just want to read you a little something. This is from some novel some woman wrote, but I put it up and I've been tagging it and tweeting it and all that stuff because I really like this little saying. And so I'm going to say it for you to stop. The saying is this: people think that intimacy is about sex, but intimacy is about truth. When you realize you can tell someone your truth, when you can show yourself to them, when you stand in front of them and their response is, you're safe with me, that's intimacy. And with that, I just want to say thank you for coming. Please join us at Sex and Relationship Healing for all the other stuff we do. Sex, Love, and Addiction podcasts, my endless blogs on Psychology Today. And if you contact us through Sex and Relationship Healing, we're glad to refer you to therapists or books or give you information. And we are going to be opening some treatment programs later this year. So we're looking forward to telling you about that.
So people are asking, what was that book that you just read from? Can you repeat the
It was
title?
somebody's novel. It was like not that interesting. It was some novel about relationships that some woman wrote. I can't even think of the...
But you said you tweeted it, right?
I tweeted out the quote. I put it. If you look up my Twitter feed, you'll see the quote. Because it's about intimacy. And so often people confuse intimacy with sex. And this is the best quote I've ever seen on intimacy. So, but it's all over my Facebook feed, my Twitter feed. You'll find it out there when you find me. Anyway, thank you, Tammy, for doing this.
Thank you. And for the partners, I invite you to join Brittany Mangum Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time for the drop-in group. So
for partners.
That's for this week for partners. So,
and I also want to say that if you didn't get your question answered, either write it to us and we'll answer it, or come find me on Friday night in the rooms at 5 o'clock California time, and I'll put you first. Just say, I missed it on Monday. Can you answer it tonight? I promise I will.
Or join in future Mondays too.
And I hope this is useful for you guys. We give this away for free with the hope that we can promote healing wherever it can be found. So thanks for your time and have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Thanks,
Bye.
Rob.
Thanks, Tammy.